So, welcome to the second webinar, guys. This is on is the most important thing that we're going to talk about, and for you guys to be thinking about during your time in Tajikistan. It's taking responsibility for safety, and as background, the way we've set up these programs, we've done almost. I think not almost. We've done everything we possibly can to mitigate risk and take risk off the table wherever it was possible in terms of with your living situation, with your transportation, what your country coordinator does, and the visits that he'll do to your site placements and the weekly meetings and all the rest. And we've prepared ourselves, and we'll begin the process of preparing you to be able to respond to a situation of duress. But the underlying premise here, and something that we want to work on, is that fourth objective that we didn't talk about as much the other day, and that's taking responsibility for safety. And that means that you guys taking responsibility for safety, because in the end, we can take all the risk that we can out of the equation, but if our volunteers or interns or unofficial ambassadors are making certain choices in how they're going to behave, then that is directly related to the risk that you face and potential adversity. And so the way I think about this is that our goal is not just for you guys to be safe this summer in Tajikistan, but that we want to give you a skill set and to begin developing certain muscles that enable you to be lifelong travelers, to work abroad, if you choose to travel abroad with your own families in a safe way and to have a good time. And so everything that we're going to talk about today is really from a skill building perspective, just the way you would learn a new language, just the way that you would adapt to a new culture. It's thinking about this and thinking about and assessing your behavior and the consequences of that behavior in order to develop this skill set. To be a lifelong traveler who enjoy all parts of the world, and also these are things that you should practice at home as well, on campus, in your hometowns. That this is not totally alien stuff that only belongs in foreign cultures. So we're going to break down our session today really into two parts: things that you need to do before you go, and then things to think about while you're there, and best practices. And do you guys have your manual?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't encourage you enough. It's a long manual, and there's about 20 pages of frequently asked questions about insurance there that are worth a solid, strong skim, perhaps a little bit more of a deeper review than that. But this section on taking responsibility for safety, what page is it on, Kathleen? I had it written down. Page 9, starting on page 49. This is really worth a read in terms of a close read, and think about and look at the links. There's about 5 pages at the beginning of it that I hope that you'll spend the time. I'm going to touch on this stuff, but I hope you'll spend the time really looking at it and thinking about it. The first thing, though, is Google STEP and State Department.
Okay.
And this is called the STEP program. And what this does is that it officially registers you with the U.S. State Department that you are going to be in Tajikistan for your set dates that you're going to be there. You put in Faridun as your local point of contact, and his phone number is in your manual as well. And you can put the Bactra Cultural Center as your address. And what this does is it puts you in the system with the State Department. And so in the event that, let's say, there's a natural disaster in Tajikistan, or there's some sort of political unrest that happens there or in a neighboring country, you're accounted for from the State Department's perspective, and that they know where you are. They will contact you. They will send you a message about whatever instructions there are that you should be aware of. These are called warden messages, like the warden of a prison, W-A-R-D-E-N. And I'm subscribed to all the countries where we have volunteers, and you get these different messages, and sometimes they're just totally innocuous messages, like on May Day there was a protest in Morocco that I got an email about, and it told me to avoid downtown areas and in certain cities because of the protests that are going on. But it's just very important that you be officially registered in this way, because in the event that officially, your government needs to get in touch with all American citizens, then you're accounted for. So this is something that you should do at least a week before you go, and you should confirm with Kathleen once you've done it that you've registered yourself with the STEP program.
Okay.
That is actually a deadline in your manual, so just pay close attention to that checklist of dates, because that's one of the steps you need to take. You can just shoot me an email once you've registered.
Okay.
The next thing on our list, and I'm going through in your manual on the taking responsibility for safety section, is to back up all of your important information. Now, we have already copies of your passport in the event that you need to back up your passport. What we recommend is that you take that same copy and that you email it to yourself, and that you keep a copy in your email account, and that you also have a physical copy that you take with you to Tajikistan, and that, very importantly, that you keep it in a separate place from where you keep your passport. Some people, when they travel, they choose to carry their passport around with them wherever they go. Other people carry a copy of their passport and they leave their passport in a safe place at home. You can leave your passport locked in your bag or in a safe place in your apartment in Dushanbe. If you want to give your passport to Ferry Dunes, put in the Bactria Cultural Center, and to keep in a safe place there, they can lock it up there as well. You just shouldn't expect daily access to it. For me, when I travel, I carry my passport in my pocket with me wherever I go, but I'm generally pretty good about not losing things, and so I feel comfortable doing that. But that's totally a personal comfort thing. The key thing, though, is that you have a physical backup of it, and that when you walk around in your daily life in Tajikistan, that you either have your passport or your passport that can prove who you are and that you are an American citizen and who you say that you are. Now, we recommend also doing a similar thing for your ATM card and your credit cards. That make a Xerox copy front and back, email a copy to yourself. If you want to email a copy to us as a backup, you can, or leave it with a family member. You can do that as well. But that you separate this out when you're there. That I'm assuming most people have an ATM card and a card. You don't keep them together, and that you keep your copies of them in a separate place altogether. So that you would keep one of them, let's say, locked up in your apartment, and the other one you could carry a person for whatever it is that you need on a daily basis. But the imperative thing here is that you're backing up your information and you're distributing the backups to a different place from where you keep the originals.
Okay. Sorry, your voice cutting out during the second one. Did you say ATM card and credit card?
I'm sorry, I always was ATM credit card. What was the beginning of the question?
Were you saying that we should make copies of the ATM card and the credit card?
Yeah, make copies of ATM card and credit card front and back, because the back has all the information about if this card is lost, who you should call and what you should do.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next thing to do is to fill all of your prescriptions before you go. And so if you're taking stuff for skin medication, if you're taking stuff, birth control, whatever it is that you have a prescription for, you should fill it and expect that you're not going to be able to refill it when you're in Dushanbe. Doesn't mean you won't be able to, but just you don't want to count on having to do that there. If you're going to take malaria pills while you're there, which is something the CDC puts on their website, that certain areas of Tajikistan there is malaria infestation. I mean, this is mostly in the Pamirs, but it's something, a choice that you should talk about with your doctor in terms of, you're going to be traveling around a little bit, but not to like the Pamir Mountains, for instance. But if you're going to take malaria pills, fill the prescription before you go and take them with you to Tajikistan. I apply this also to any basic medications that you take. So if you're liable to get headaches, whatever it is you take for migraine headaches, bring that with you. For me, when I travel, I always make sure I have a little Tylenol bottle filled with Aleve. I bring Imodium AD with me, Pepto-Bismol. I get a prescription for Cipro filled, CIPRO. It's an anti-diarrheal medicine that is an antibiotic, so that if you get a bug, it doesn't last the whole time. You go on Cipro and it's over in a couple of days. feminine hygiene products, anything that you would use at home that you're really dependent upon, bring it with you. And I always bring a little thing of Neosporin, and you can always get hydrogen peroxide there. But the point being is that there's not like a 24-hour pharmacy downstairs from you, as you might have in Fort Lauderdale or in Tempe. So you just want to be prepared for it's 11 o'clock at night. If I need something, I have it here, rather than having to go out and try to find it or wait until the morning.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
Nope.
Okay. This is particular. The next one is particular for you guys. It's very important for Tajikistan. It's a long trip for you to get there. No bones about that. So I imagine that you guys are flying to New York or to DC, and then to Istanbul, and then to Dushanbe. And so whether you've done that kind of lengthy travel before or not, it's still a long trip. So when you're in the U.S. airport, I think you guys know pretty well how to behave and like what to expect. As you have a 5 or 10-hour layover in Istanbul, keep in mind that you're going to be tired from the trip across the ocean, and that you're going to have this long stretch of time to fill there. In the Istanbul airport, there's Starbucks, there's restaurants, there's places where you can buy water, drink coffee, eat a meal. You've got to keep in mind that the currency exchange is going to be different. In that airport, though, you can use a credit card, and they'll also take dollars if you want to buy something, but you can use your credit card, and they'll charge it to, it'll get the exact exchange rate on the credit card. Something I always do is I bring snack bars with me for these kinds of long trips. I bring an empty bottle of water that I can fill up, and take with me and be drinking water. You want to make sure you stay hydrated. You want to know where your gate is for your next flight. Like, one of the first things to do when you land at the airport, obviously you probably want to use the bathroom, but just get eyes on where your gate is. The Istanbul airport is a huge airport, so find your gate. You don't need to sit there for the whole 7 hours or whatever it is, but just know where it is so that you can come back to it with plenty of time to board your flight. And you should be back at your gate probably about an hour, hour and a half before your flight departs. Hour and a half to be on the safe side.
Okay.
When you guys arrive in Dushanbe, it's a bit hectic in terms of arriving at the airport, and all the flights arrive at something like 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's just a lot of travelers who do not speak English. That Dushanbe is not a major tourist destination yet, and so you guys will have your visas already and your passports. You'll get in the line for people who have their visas. I assume that you guys are on the same flight because there's a limited number of flights that go into Dushanbe. So it's a great idea for the two of you to meet up with Kenneth and Julia, because they'll all be arriving at the same time. And that you guys go through immigration. You'll show them your passport with the visa stamp in it. And then you'll also get your bags, and then you'll come outside, and Faridun will be waiting there for you with the driver. He will have a sign that says unofficial ambassadors on it. And there's a picture of Faridun on the front page of our website right now as well, with some of our volunteers from last summer. And he's the guy in the middle. He's tall and has dark hair and darker skin. And so he should be easily to recognize. He'll be looking for you. But there's someone specifically who's going to be waiting for you to pick you up at the airport. And they'll take you to your apartment, and you guys will have time to rest before your in-country orientation starts with Faridun and Dr. Gross from the College of New Jersey. Any questions about the travel?
I don't think so.
Okay. So let's move on to, very importantly, what is it that we do in the event of emergency? And this is the orange box that is on page 49 in your manual. You guys see it?
Yes.
Okay.
That's 59 on mine.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at. I got the Morocco manual
Okay.
numbers. Okay, so the number one thing you see a protest coming down the street. You're in a restaurant and somebody starts flipping over tables. There's a fire in the building where you are or in your placement. It's the same thing that you would do in the United States. You extricate from yourself from the situation as quickly and as gracefully as possible. You stand up, you walk away, you go outside, and you look for the safest public place that you can find in order to basically hunker down. So that could be a bank, that could be a Western restaurant, that could be a hotel lobby, that could be a car dealership. But you are looking for people who demonstratively share our interest in living in a prosperous, stable, secure, safe society. Car dealers want to sell cars, and they're capitalists. They want to make money. They're not interested in instability and unrest. Hotels are trying to cater to foreign populations to come and to have a wonderful time in their country. They're in the service industry. Western restaurants like McDonald's, these are safe places for you, and you want to be around other people in that kind of event that share the sort of ethos about what life is all about, and that are not the outliers who are going to like destroy a restaurant or flip out or do whatever it is that they're going to do. While protests can be attractive, from a political science perspective, this is not the time to start taking pictures and asking people questions about why they're protesting. You just have to basically defer that to another time, and you frankly you don't speak the local language, and there isn't enough that you can. You're not a journalist. You just need to protect yourself and to get yourself away from those kinds of situations. Once you've gotten yourself out of a situation that you perceived to be a threat or a negative challenge in that way, you should immediately call Faridun on your local cell phone. You'll all get local cell phones. You'll all program numbers into your local cell phones when you're doing your orientation. Faridun is available on a 24-hour basis to respond to emergencies and to help you. So you call Faridun. You'll have a backup number in terms of his assistant who's going to be helping him if for whatever reason Faridun doesn't answer his cell phone immediately. And then there's also another guy, Mark, who runs the Baxter Center, who will not be a third backup for you to call. But it's the same thing of like when you see somebody that would, like, let's say, has a heart attack here in the United States, the first thing you do is you call 911. That you want to mobilize help. So you're getting yourself out of danger and you're mobilizing help, and you're saying where you are, what's going on, and what you're asking for guidance on what is it that I should do next. Also say that if needed, call the local emergency contact number if there's a fire or the police. Given the language barrier, I'm not sure how effective that will be in Tajikistan. I will say that if you are a situation where you feel as if you're personally being threatened by a group of people and you go up to a police officer, the police officer will, that's an authority figure. He or she, it's their job to help you. They're not going to turn their back on you because you're a foreign citizen, but they're there to not protect and serve to the same level as we expect our police to do here in the United States. And our police, lately it's been revealed they're having some problems in that area in different places, so I don't want to say that they are 100% right all the time, but the concept remains that our police exist in the United States in order to protect citizens and prevent others from committing crimes, and that's, there is a level of corruption in developing countries that we don't have in the United States, but all being said, these guys are supposed to help you if you're having a problem. The other thing to mention in the box is we have a crisis counselor who we work with, Murray, whose number and Skype is in the manual in your contacts page. And we haven't had a situation, fortunately, where anyone has been physically or sexually assaulted in any of our programs, thank God. But that is a reality that's out there. We do have somebody professional for you to speak with in the event that you want to talk about. And both me and Kathleen are available on a 24-hour basis to contact us in case something happens or you want to talk something through or you're having a difficult time. One of the worst things to do in a situation is to suffer in silence. And we do not want you to suffer in silence. We want either to be the help that you need for a situation or to be able to help you get that help as quickly as possible. Let me pause there for a second. Do you guys have any questions?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so I had a couple of scenarios I wanted to put to you guys later in the webinar. I'll do one of them right now. And this is a real situation that happened last summer in Morocco. We had a volunteer who was coming back from a homestay weekend as part of our program there and being picked up at a train station in a major Moroccan city by a driver that we had sent from our program. And while the driver was waiting for the volunteer to come out, and then when the volunteer came out, other taxi cab drivers accosted the driver and took issue with the fact that he was taking a fare away from them, even though he had been a prepaid driver that was there to pick up this one fare. Several drivers got in the driver's face and physically confronted him, and the volunteer was standing there right next to the driver. What would you guys do in that situation?
Well, I guess according to what we've talked about, I don't know what is around the train station, like what other safe places there are to find, but probably like stepping away from the angry other drivers to remove yourself from any potential of getting hurt in that exchange, and immediately calling Faradun or whoever their person was to get further guidance about a next step. Would probably be what I'd do.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. Go ahead, Albert.
Oh, just to add to that, I think after I had removed myself from the situation and contacted our country coordinator, I probably would have looked for some sort of authority figure to maybe help the driver, but only after I've removed myself from the situation and I feel safe. So maybe finding an officer or something around, someone who looked like they had authority, and just pointing out the situation and seeing if they would be willing to do anything.
Perfect. You guys got it, 100%. Unfortunately, our volunteer did not do that, and luckily she escaped harm, although people said some bad things to her and somebody spat at her. She should have gone back into the train station. The train station is a safe place. There's a police officer in the train station. In her case, she speaks French, and she could have mobilized help to help the driver immediately, and instead she confronted the people with the driver. And she's just very lucky that it didn't work out in a bad way for her. And that goes back to the overall point about personally taking responsibility for safety. There's nothing that Kathleen or I can do for you in that moment of that situation. It's the decision that you guys are going to make about what's the wise thing to do here, what's the most prudent thing to do. And a woman who I like very much and is a very big-hearted young woman, she saw the injustice of this driver being confronted, who she knew. The driver's name is Ahmed. I know him too, and I'm really sorry that this happened. But she thought that they were in it together, and that she had to defend him. And all of us on this call have big hearts and things that we want to do to help other people. I mean, the reason why you guys are going to Tajikistan speaks enormously to your character. But there are certain times where you have to make very practical decisions to protect yourself, and where you don't really get everything that's going on in the context. And you guys answered that perfectly, and I hope that you don't face a similar situation like that, but that you had the right instincts in terms of what is it that one should do. Okay, let's talk about another I wanted to present to you. I'll just put that in there right now as well. So someone from Erota, one of the families, decides they would love to have you come over for dinner for a breakfast. You're going to be there during Ramadan. They are so happy that you're working with their child at Erota, and they invite you to dinner. how would you handle the invitation?
I guess I would talk to the founder of Iroda and been like, is that something that you condone? Because I'm also a representation not only of AUA but of them. So I guess I would ask them that they were okay with it. And then, I don't know, maybe ask Faradune or one of you guys to see what you think would be best and if it's something that is appropriate, or I don't know, it might be a little sticky.
So maybe like in the moment saying something along the lines of like, like, thank you so much, that's really generous. Let me check with so-and-so to make sure I'm available, or that's something I could do. And then get back to them once we talk to the other people.
Very good, guys. Yeah, I mean, so one, you want to be polite. They're extending a hand to you, and so that's a really nice thing to be invited to somebody's house for dinner. Two, which you guys said, you want to do a mini vetting of asking Lola of Aroda and Faradune, like, is this okay? What do you think about this? And three, more often than not, in that kind of situation, if someone from your placement, people are going to say, it's a great idea. That'll be really nice for you. You should go. But you shouldn't go by yourself. So you should ask, is it okay if Katie comes with me or Aubrey comes with me? Can I bring Kenneth and Julia as well? They would love to experience it as well. And then four, what's the address of where the place is? And for A, giving that address to Faradune or someone who's not going to be there so they know where you are. And then for B, figuring out how you're going to go there and come back. Whether the driver who takes you to and from work is going to be able to take you, or whether you're going to take a taxi, or just like, maybe this person lives 20 minutes outside the city, and so you're not stranded there. But navigating what your transportation plan is going to be, getting there and coming home, and making sure that somebody knows where you are. And that goes for things you do on weekends, and if you do any sort of travel outside of Dushanbe on the weekends, which is legitimately, it's difficult to travel there because the infrastructure is not very strong. We have a few group trips that we have planned for you guys for that reason. But it's making sure that somebody knows where you are and that you figured out how is it that you're going to go and come back. And it's an amazing thing how dependent we are on smartphones these days. It's that being able to just put in what's my destination, how do I get back, when's the train coming, when's the bus coming. Like, unless you're going to pay a lot for roaming charges, which you should do in an emergency, but just as a general rule, like, I don't even know how Tajikistan comes up on on a smartphone if you're trying to, I don't think they have Waze there. I mean, like, you've just got to go back 10 years and plan a little bit in advance of how you're going to get somewhere, how you're going to get back, and think of it as like a physical map rather than using a smartphone. Okay, let's move on and talk about insurance for a couple minutes, and then sexual harassment, and then some best practices in daily life, which we've started to get into with the scenarios. With the insurance, if you turn the page in your manual, this is very good travel insurance. And you have coverage, and it's listed there on one of the first pages when you get into insurance FAQs. I think it's on the inside of the first page or the second page in terms of what your benefits and limits are. And I just want to review what they are so you understand them just in general. This insurance starts when you land on the ground or in Dushanbe. And then it ends when you take off from Dushanbe at the end of your program. So you can extend it for the start of your trip, like when you leave Fort Lauderdale or when you leave Arizona. And if you're going to travel afterwards, I can't recommend enough to you that you should extend it for the days after when you travel afterwards, because the insurance, it costs about $1.50 a day, and it just gives you full coverage in terms of like your medical, your evacuation, etc. So let's say you have some kind of accident or incident where you have to be medically evacuated. You can no longer participate in the program. then with the doctor signing off on this there, then you get medically evacuated. Or if, let's say, you have something where you need a surgery all out of the blue that you weren't aware of, this can also medically evacuate you for that, since I don't think anybody wants for you to have non-emergency surgery in Dushanbe. But the key is that it has to be medically supported, but you have up to $50,000 worth of coverage to basically bring you home. They also have trip interruption. So if somebody in your nuclear family gets sick and you need to come home and help take care of them, then you get supporting documentation from his or her doctor in the United States, and you have up to $3,000 of coverage to buy an airplane ticket and to come home. The insurance also has evacuation for political unrest or natural disaster. So let's say there's some sort of political incident in Kazakhstan, the country next door. And the State Department issues a travel warning saying it's not wise for Americans to be traveling in the different Central Asia states at this time. Then that would activate the insurance, and then we would have the option to evacuate you and to bring you back. If there's like a natural disaster, it's the same kind of thing. One of the important things about the insurance is that it's your insurance plan. So we will give you a unique ID card that is part of your insurance. We will enroll you in it. But if you go to a doctor and want to submit a form for reimbursement for the insurance, it's something that you have to do. We can't do that for you. It's also like if you need this kind of evacuation, then it has to be you or your parents who are interfacing with the insurance. That we can be supportive and we can facilitate, we can tell them the insurance that you're going to be calling and that this is the situation, and we corroborate your story about what's happening. It's your policy, and you have to be owners of the policy. There's one other thing I meant to say about trip interruption. It's not just for if a nuclear family member gets sick, but let's say you have a freak accident and you break your leg, and it's just like you just can't get around Dushanbe and do your work as you had hoped that you're going to be able to do. The trip interruption can cover you for that as well. You get a doctor's note saying that you want to come home and curtail your program. Any questions about the insurance?
So when will we be signed up for it and like get that card?
You'll get it about a week before you go.
Okay, cool.
Okay, if no questions on the insurance, then let's move on to the issue of sexual harassment that we take really seriously. We take all this really seriously, but sometimes people don't take sexual harassment seriously enough, so that's why I add that for emphasis. There's no cost of doing business with going to Tajikistan or to Morocco or any of these places where we anticipate that because you decide to go and volunteer in one of these countries, that you should expect to be sexually harassed in your workplace on a daily basis, because that's just how the culture is. It's not acceptable. It would not be acceptable for a Tajik woman to have sexual overtures made to her in the workplace by Tajik men, and we don't expect that in your situation. Unfortunately, and this is part of the reason why we do these programs, is that certain stereotypes exist about Western women, and we've had 2 cases of sexual harassment across all 4 of our countries where we run the summer service internship program in the 3 years that we've done this, and one of them was in Tajikistan. I kind of think of sexual harassment in 2 fairly large buckets. One of them being overt actions that make you uncomfortable from a sexual perspective, or overtures that are being made, and that if you held up the sign to everyone about this is what happened, then 99% of people in the room would agree that it's a sexual harassment. And the other bucket are things that happen in a gray area of people feeling uncomfortable because of things that were said, perhaps misconstrued, perhaps subtle things that were supposed to have an alternative meaning. The bottom line, though, is that we take all of it very seriously, and your perspective is what matters in terms of if you feel as if you're being sexually harassed, we treat it as if you're being sexually harassed. So fortunately, in that one case where the young woman was sexually harassed in her place of work, in her first day on the job in Tajikistan, she reported it immediately to Faridun. He reported it to us. And then Faridun did an intervention with the person's supervisor. There was a guy that hung around all day and was like asking her out, making compliments to her, and all like that, like in that very overt category. And the supervisor was very upset about it. You know, the guy was told that he should not come back, and that he would be fired if this kind of behavior continued, because your hosts take their responsibility as hosts very, very seriously, and they don't want people coming to their country. They're going to leave their country saying, "I was miserable the whole time because of how I was being treated." So, the number one thing to do when this kind of thing happens is not to suffer in silence, but to raise the issue. You don't need to wait for your formal reflection session or your formal weekly visit from Faridun to your site. Say something immediately to them, say something immediately to us, and we need to resolve the situation. If it's a situation where you can directly just say, "No, thank you, please, I'm not interested in that, leave me alone," then that's fine. A lot of the times, and best practices in corporate America, is that you bring in a third party from a human resources perspective to handle the situation. And in your specific case, Faridun will go and do a meeting, can include you in the meeting or not include you, depending upon your preference, and nip the situation in the bud. This doesn't mean that walking down the street, someone might say something to you, things that are beyond our control in terms of what we can do, but certainly in your placement, in your living situation, there should be no instance where you're feeling as if you're being sexually harassed. And that also includes with fellow volunteers, male or female. Our other situation of sexual harassment was, it was unfortunate that the volunteer didn't tell us that she felt as if she was being harassed until her last day in country in Zanzibar. She was in a public school in Zanzibar, and it colored her experience in some ways. I really wish that she would have raised it earlier, because, like I said, it's not the cost of doing business. It's something that we take very seriously, and after the volunteer left Zanzibar, we still investigate it. We wish we could have done it while she was there, and we confronted the parties that were involved with it at the school where it was happening, at the Ministry of Education, and they were mortified that this was not part of what they had wanted to happen as far as hosting volunteers in a school in Zanzibar. And so we raised the issue with them, and there was total agreement in terms of a Zanzibari woman would not have treated in the same way, that certain overtures would not have been permissive in that culture. And so our great regret with that was that the volunteer did not clue us in at an earlier point to tell us what was happening, because like I said, safety is our number one priority, and we would bend over backwards to make the situation better.
Yeah.
Any questions, guys?
I have a question that kind of just popped into my head about the insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Being informed of where that insurance is applicable if something does happen, or will it just kind of be like, we'll like have that information at hand?
So as part of your orientation, you guys will talk about where the local clinic is, and so if you need to go somewhere, then you'll go to that clinic. Also identified like a doctor, that the embassy uses, and in particular in Tajikistan, you're going to do a briefing with the regional security officer at the embassy, and so there'll be a number of resources that are pointed out to you, but you would pay for whatever services you got, and then submit the receipts and the forms to the insurance.
Okay, but anywhere we went, if it was recommended by the embassy, that is where reimbursement would be like possible.
Yeah. So if all you need to do is come away from the clinic or the doctor with like a form that's signed or stamped and has like the address on it. Doesn't even matter if it's in Tajik language. That you're going to submit and say that I had a sprained ankle. I paid 500 some monies for it, and then you submit it with the exchange rate to the insurance.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's a specific form you fill out and submit it with a receipt.
Okay.
Okay. I think we can go very quickly through some best practices. I have it down here as some daily practice. But I'm going to just preface this to say I could spend an hour talking about this. I'm not going to spend an hour talking about this because we don't, I can stick on the call for as long as you guys can, but I just want to be respectful of time, and we can do questions for a longer period of time.
Okay.
I want to really encourage you, though, in that taking responsibility for safety section of your manual, I want to really encourage you to go through and read Preventative Securities to Being Safe Abroad, the links to the Peace Corps study and the OSAC study, which are all on that page. And then on the next page, there's 2 checklists about awareness and personal conduct. And I think those are gold. That in times where I do a 2-hour briefing on this, we get into a longer discussion of those. And like I said, I'm happy to spend more time on it if you guys have the time later this morning. So, but my perspective of having lived, worked, traveled around the Middle East and the Muslim world for the last 20 years or so, I've broken this down into 5 daily practices that I think have done well for me in terms of being able to travel successfully and to create strong cross-cultural partnerships in the process and be able to have an impact in my work. The first thing, very importantly, is to conduct yourself professionally and to expect respect from people, to deliberately expect respect from people. In some conversations we have with people who have teaching placements, we tell them, don't wear shorts or jeans to class as a teacher, that you're not projecting out with your dress that you're a serious person in that case that commands people's respect standing in front of a classroom. Doesn't mean you need to wear a suit and a tie, but there's just, I think you guys know this in terms of how you present yourself is, unfortunately, it's a superficial world, and people will draw a first impression of you. But that also carries over to body language and how you carry yourself. If somebody's looking for a victim to mug or to, steal something from other scenario, they're not looking for someone who's making eye contact with people, who's standing up straight, who's projecting, reflecting confidence out to the world. Doesn't mean you have that confidence. I'm not telling you to be arrogant, but you want to be projecting your best self out there. One of the best weapons in this regard is a smile. Just be ready to smile with people and make eye contact with people. And it, more often than not, people want to smile back at you, and it's a way to have a connection. But it's also that's not who someone is going to target for petty crime. Is if it's someone who is projecting that kind of confidence and expecting respect. And that goes back to the sexual harassment conversation, is that you need to know that you do not deserve to be sexually harassed. You need to know you don't deserve to be harassed in any sort of way, and you need to carry yourself in that way. It's not acceptable just because you're a young American who's come to volunteer in Tajikistan. Second is to be patient and calm in the face of daily life. Like there's cultural differences / shock that you will just be exposed to from the moment you step off the airplane and you try to figure out which is the right visa line, which is the right line to enter for people who have visas to get into the country. If there's even a line. I mean, it could be one of these amoeba type things where people don't line up and they're just all trying to push their passports, through the window. Just, you're not in a rush. Most cases there, people are not in a rush. Patient. These cross-cultural differences, not the annoying thing about there being no lines, but these kinds of cross-cultural differences are, one of the really fun and different things and challenging things that will you'll end up appreciating about the time there. The time that you spend having lunch with your colleagues at work, or having dinner at somebody's house. Just be patient and try to adapt to how people are doing things. If they're showing up 20 minutes late for a meeting, doesn't mean you should show up 20 minutes late as well, but just be understanding that that's just the culture, is that people are going to be late. Next is to use all 5 of your senses. You're hard-pressed to ride the subway or the metro in New York or here in D.C. and to find someone who's doesn't have earbuds in their ears, who's not listening to something or watching something or talking on the phone. You shouldn't ever be using earbuds in a public place in Tajikistan. Number one, you're going to miss out on something good. I mean, you want to be interested in everything. But number two, you just need to hear what's going on around you, like just traffic patterns. Like someone could sideswipe if you're standing on a corner with earbuds in your ear, and you could just, they don't always obey all the red lights, or whatever the case may be. Is you want to be listening in addition to seeing and everything else. This is a female group on this call, but I was going to say in some cases for men, you guys are able to extend your hands to women there, whether if they're wearing the headscarf or not, and they'll happily shake your hand and say hello to you. Sometimes you get kisses on the cheek when you meet somebody. For young men, you should wait until a woman extends her hand to see if she wants to shake hands with you or not. And you shouldn't anticipate that it's like in France where you're going to kiss your counterparts on the cheek, regardless of what their gender is. So just to be conscious of that in terms of the touching is one of your five senses. The fourth is don't be a hero. And we covered this a little bit when we talked about the train station and extricating yourself from a situation. There are times and places in your lives where we're counting on you to be a hero. And you guys are heroes by going to Tajikistan and wanting to invest yourself and your time in helping these different communities. But you see two people fighting on a street corner, it's not your job to break up that fight. It's your job to turn around and to go the other way, and if there's a police officer, to send them down there to help those people. Just be very careful about that, about not taking on other people's problems in an effort to save the world. One street fight at a time. And then I think most importantly is knowing your own limitations and taking care of yourself both physically and mentally. On the physical sense, you should be drinking bottled water there. You should ease into the food. Try eating a lot of bread and peeled fruits to line your stomach and build up to the different, cuisine of Tajikistan, which they have wonderful food there. Bring hand sanitizer with you. Use sanitizer, before your meals. Like they've got great barbecue there, but I mean, people, they're rolling in their hands. So just think about these kinds of things. You don't need to be crazy about it, but you also don't want to spend the whole time you're there being sick. I would not drink the tap water. You'll have the water. One of those big water things in your apartment where you can fill up your water bottles and drink water from there. Mentally, these are intensive experiences, and they're wonderful experiences, but everybody needs downtime, however it is that they get downtime. Don't be apologetic for taking your own downtime. If you're a person who needs to write in a journal to figure out what you're thinking about and to sort of unload information, then do that. If you're someone who needs to go for a run, then do that. If you're someone who needs to talk to other people, we've got formal ways through reflection sessions. Kathleen and I are always available from the formal sense, and there's also just informal ways of talking with like Faridun or your other volunteers. But the reflection sessions are designed for you guys to be able to talk about things that are challenging, things that are going well, opportunities to be a great citizen diplomat, and then also things that you're worried about or have noticed from a safety perspective. Those reflection sessions to be able to keep yourself mentally healthy. It's very important to know your limitations. And get enough sleep. We had a volunteer last summer in Pakistan that spent just an inordinate amount of time. He took on too many commitments, and it found out, again, like you want to find out these things while they're happening, not at the end. But in the last week that he was there, or 2 weeks left, it turned out he was sleeping 3 hours, 4 hours a night, and he just taken his other commitments with different, other side projects, and just said, "What are you doing to yourself?" I mean, like you've got to take care of yourself. You have to be able to say no sometimes because you don't want to spread yourself too thin. Let me say one more thing, and then we'll get to any questions that you have about anything. And that's on social media. You guys are so much more social media savvy, and social media, like, it's such a part of people your age's lives than it is, for me or Kathleen. And the thing I would just caution for you is you're going to write blog posts for our blog, which is great. You're going to take photographs, which is great. But everything you put out there is out there. So if you're writing something critical of people at your placement or of your fellow volunteers, you should expect that they're going to read that or find that, or a future employer is going to read that. And just conscious of anything that you publish on your Instagram or your Twitter feed or that you put on your Facebook, that's out there. That's part of your digital footprint. There's an element of not wanting to reveal too many details about who you are, where you live from a safety perspective, and then there's also an element of wanting to make sure that you are a strong citizen diplomat and that you're not poking fun or causing people to feel bad about things that you're saying, like, all the teachers in my school are, ridiculous and they're not, I mean, just like those kinds of examples. If a teacher there would say, well, why are you here? Why did you come here to make fun of us? I mean, you can be, they can be better teachers, but that's not going to help them be better teachers. So let me stop there. And Kathleen, did I miss anything major before we go to questions?
No, I think you covered everything. Yeah, I can't really think of anything to add right now. I just really want to stress, especially on the sexual harassment piece, to speak up if you're ever feeling uncomfortable in a situation, and also just kind of acknowledging the spectrum that is, I mean, there's a spectrum of things that can happen when it comes to sexual harassment, from walking down the street and being catcalled, which we experience in, any American city or town as well. So, know yourself, trust your instincts, and feel free to speak up to either Ben or me if there's something that's making you uncomfortable. We really want to hear about it. That's all.
Kathleen, do you want to say something about professional dress for women?
Oh, sure.
What do you recommend?
So I think in your placements, if casual would probably be the best, with also, with respect to the cultural norms in Tajikistan, long skirts and blouses, long pants and blouses. You might want to bring a headscarf just in case you're invited to, a mosque or someone's home and they might, and you want to make sure you're being respectful. I think err on the side of more professional if you're not sure, at least until you spend a few weeks in your placement and observe how your colleagues are dressing. And again, if you ever have any questions about that specifically, feel free to run them by me or by Ben, and we can give our 2 cents. And you're both at Erota, so I think, you'll be interacting with the children there, so you're going to want, you don't want to be like restricted in terms of your mobility by what you're wearing. So keep in mind as well. I think, personal experience, like long, like maxi skirts or light, long pants and a blouse has worked the best for me. So just some advice.
Do you have a recommendation in terms of like what kind of shoe, like footwear to bring?
I would bring, flats or something like maybe for work. And, if you have, I would bring, well, you're going to go on a hike, so bring sneakers. Yeah. And I would definitely bring flats for work, at least until I, again, observe what my colleagues are wearing. If they're wearing sneakers or sandals, then, I'm sure that you can feel, I'm sure you're allowed to as well, but I would just cover all my bases in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And, if any other questions come up, just let me know.
And you can wear jeans as well to Erota, like nice jeans. That's the times I've been there, I've seen Lola wearing jeans. So.
Okay.
And I don't know how many pictures you've seen, but a lot of women in Tajikistan wear like a long shirt and then, like one of these, like almost like a Pakistani type shirt, like a khamis, and then like very colorful floral shirts and pants that go along with that. So, okay. Just my 2 cents.
Awesome.
There's something else I just wanted to mention about Tajikistan. It's a little bit different than other countries, and this overlay or underlay of former Soviet culture there. And yeah, when you think about going to the Muslim world, you don't necessarily think about that. And there's discos there, and there's a culture where people drink, and like that aspect of the former Soviet Union. I mean, certainly not like a majority of people, but you might be surprised to find that there. And I would really caution you about that environment. It's just, Arizona State's a really fun place, from what I understand, and you guys, I don't want to tell you what to do on your room in Arizona State, but I don't think that you're going to Dushanbe to go to, like, to be in a disco at midnight, like on a weekend night, where there's a bunch of guys and maybe just a handful of girls. Like, it just, that's the kind of thing in terms of situational awareness. Like, there's really not a lot good that can come out of that.
Yeah.
And it's so much better to just avoid that and not send the wrong impression to someone about why you're there. Because basically you're probably going there to have a story to tell or to just do a compare and contrast. And there's a very high risk to a low return for putting yourself in that situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, really no good would probably come out of that situation.
And I can almost guarantee you that there's nothing more fun in that disco than what you have at Arizona State. I mean, or Fort Lauderdale. I mean, like, it's just, like, save it for home.
And that's not the purpose of this trip at all. So.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, guys, this is your time, though. So what questions? It could be anything.
Okay, well, one thing was talking about social media and stuff. When we post, like, the blog posts for the program, can we, like, have links to those on our Facebook pages or that kind of thing to, like, keep family and friends updated? Or do you recommend, like, not doing that? Like, I guess.
Definitely. We want for you to keep your friends updated. We want you to stay in touch with your family. Like, I advocate sending text messages and emails to your friends and family on a daily or regular basis, just to say, hey, things are good. You know, but and we definitely want you to be proud of what you post on our page and to share that with people.
Cool.
I was just kind of curious as to what the logistics of the apartment look like.
Yeah. So it's a 3-story building, and it's the top floor of the building. And typically we rent out, there's 2 apartments up there. We typically rent out both apartments, but because of the group size this year, we've only rented out the big apartment rather than the second apartment up there. There is a locked door down on the first floor of the building, so you go up 2 flights of steps to the apartment. And then I'm struggling to remember the number, but it's either like 4 or 5 bedrooms in the apartment. So I'm pretty sure each one of you is going to have your own room, and there's at least 2 bathrooms in that big apartment. So I think you'll probably just end up splitting the bathrooms, one a male bathroom, one a female bathroom, so you have privacy.
Okay.
But that'll be, you guys will go through and make your own group sort of rules of living together during orientation, and that's something that you can discuss in terms of what will be the best for everybody.
Okay, and those are, like, fully furnished, right, with, like, bedding and stuff. Do you recommend that we bring any of our own stuff? Or?
Yeah, there is bedding that comes with the apartment. There is towels, and it's fully furnished. And the furniture is like, Tajikistan furniture. It's not, the same furniture that you have at home.
Cool.
So some of it's really comfortable, some of it not.
Awesome. I guess one thing I just thought of, is there, in terms of, like, washing clothes and sheets and that kind of stuff, do they have washing machines, or do people do more of, like, hand washing stuff?
So as part of the program, we have a couple of wonderful ladies who are going to come to the apartment and cook you guys dinner 3 times a week, and also clean the apartment and do basic laundry. So it's pretty good, and people rave about their cooking. I always recommend bringing a piece of Tupperware so that you can take stuff with you for lunch, because there's always too much food.
Awesome. Okay, Okay, so one thing, I don't know exactly how to frame this question, but you were saying there's that one guy who just like took on a lot of stuff and wasn't getting much sleep. Is in terms of our internship placements, like, do we have pretty set responsibilities, or is there just a lot of flexibility for like taking on projects? Like, I'm just interested in knowing like where all that extra work came from for him. If that.
You will have set responsibilities, and we do our best to set them. Like we have a scope of work that we've been emailing with Lola about this past week actually that we'll be sharing with you before you go. And there's an element of defining responsibilities in that framework though, that it's not going to be a situation where you do a task, and then you go and say, all right, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? There's some broad responsibilities like doing research to find funding opportunities for the organization. And so you work on that, and then you'll report back to Lola after a time, and then you work on other things. So there's like engaging with the kids who come there and doing activities with them, and there's a schedule for that. So there's a mix of things that on paper, and that also as like self-starters that you do on your own initiative. And so in part this guy got into trouble with being like a good self-starter and starting a bunch of things, and then realizing he'd started up too many things, and how do I do all of them? And then another part, one of the things he was doing was also teaching English classes, and like there was a couple of situations came up where the place where he was teaching wanted to open up a few more classes, and he said yes to teaching them, where he probably should have said, I'm sorry, I don't have the time to do this.
Okay, gotcha.
I think that's just like a life lesson in general that you'll encounter in any job, and not necessarily just like with your AUA internship. Is there's always opportunity to take on more, or not do as much as you could, and it's really just a matter of your limits. So no, I think like for him it was almost like a first job lesson rather than something specific to AUA, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And again, much like the sexual harassment issue, if you ever have a question or just need to run something by someone, I definitely recommend talking to Ben or Faridun or me and just say like, hey, these are the things on my plate. Here's what I'm thinking about taking on. Do you think I can still fulfill my like main responsibilities with this additional task? And just have a conversation about it, rather than suffering in silence, like Ben said.
And for those conversations, I think that your starting point should be Faridun. Faridun is excellent, and he knows these groups really well. He knows the environment there really well, and he's just a wonderful resource. We're very happy to work with him. And so just having direct conversation with him about I'm not getting enough to do, or I'm getting too much to do, or what do you recommend on this? Because we're happy to help, but if you come to us, then our immediate first step is going to be go to Faridun and say, Faridun, what do you think of this situation?
Okay.
And he's also he's going to come to your placement on a weekly basis, meet with you, meet with your supervisor, and talk about these things. And we've structured that into the program.
Okay, cool.
I had a question about sort of electronics. Do you recommend that we buy a converter or adapter here, or wait until we're there? What is your guidance on that?
So I think that you could look at the kind of plugs that go into the wall in Central Asia and get one of those travel things where you can plug your electronics into that. You actually don't need something that's going to change. I guess it's a converter that changes it from 110 to 220. All you need is something that you're going to plug your device into, and then that's going to go into the wall. So sometimes, depending upon where you live, that's easier to get in the country where you're going to than where you are right now. But so you could order that online, and there's also sometimes like a disappointment, like you think that maybe we could do a little bit of research on this and find a good picture of what does it look like in the outlets in Tajikistan, or we can also ask one of the alumni in that webinar about what they did with that. I think that we could come up with a couple of better options for you for that.
Okay.
But it's not a unique problem or challenge. Like it won't be that you're not going to be able to.
Okay. And have you had pretty good success in terms of like having internet access with, I guess, either the placements or the apartment, or like where is the best place to be able to have access to internet?
So that's a disappointment to people, just to be honest, because
Yeah.
it's a developing country, that's infrastructure. Each one of you will get a stick that you can stick into your laptop. I think it's like a 3G stick, or I don't remember the specifications of it. And you can use that. You can refill it with additional. There's enough on it that it should, I think we budgeted it. It should last while you're there. But if you're streaming movies and doing that kind of stuff, then it's not going to last that long in terms of the prepaid package on it. So,
Sure.
but people have had a challenge with that connection, and then you can go to the Baxter Cultural Center and use a computer there, even though you guys are not going to be placed there. And also at Erota, they should have a good Wi-Fi connection, because you guys will be taking your laptops and working from your own laptops. They don't have workstations for you, but you'll be using your own laptop, so you should be able to accomplish the related stuff while you're there too.
Okay.
I'm sure you can all see, but I posted a link about the electrical outlets to expect in Tajikistan, so you can be prepared.
Awesome.
Oh, good one.
This is a question that might be better for like alumni. I know we've talked about like what to pack in terms of like medicines and clothing. Are there any other like essential things that you guys recommend we make sure we bring?
Chargers for your devices, certainly.
Okay.
Mini first aid kit, which we talked about. Water bottle, Tupperware.
Hygiene products, which we talked about.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, or Kindle with books on it, or something for you to be able to, like, English language. I mean, Backtrack Cultural Center has stuff there, like a little library, and there's things like that there. But just going back to the mental health piece of something that whatever your downtime activity is something that will enable you to do that.
Yeah.
I would also bring like a crossbody bag rather than a handbag if you're going to carry a purse around. It's just kind of important to have everything in front of you rather than behind you when you're walking around.
Okay.
So just a suggestion, if you have one, I don't want to tell you to go and buy something, but just like something to be mindful of when you're walking around.
Okay. And like for bringing laptops to the placements, do you recommend we get like a side laptop bag rather than a backpack?
Well, you're going to get, Ben, I believe at Erota there's a car, right, that will pick Katie and Aubrey up. Okay. So you're not going to be walking anywhere like with your laptop. You'll get picked up and dropped off every day. But just in terms of like protecting your laptop, you might want to have a case or bag for it when you're transporting it. If you're a klutz like me and like drop and break everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Trying to think of what else is helpful. I think we covered almost everything.
You
might want to bring, and we talked about this intro session, you might, and this is more of just like a fun thing, you might want to bring some like postcards from your hometown or an ASU to share with the people you meet. Camera, if you're, I don't know if you are going to use your smartphone to take photos or if you have a different camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the cell phone that we get just like a basic one to be able to call people on?
Yes.
Perfect.
Retro flip phone.
And you'll be able to receive international calls on that phone and not be charged for it. So once you have your numbers, you share that with your family, friends, and they call you, and they'll pay for it. We use WhatsApp a lot.
Yeah.
We do FaceTime, Skype.
Yeah, and WhatsApp is great because, I mean, if you have an iPhone and your family and friends have iPhones, you can connect to Wi-Fi and use iMessage. But WhatsApp, you can do that across platforms, so definitely recommend if you haven't, if you don't it, putting it.
Okay. Great.
Aubrey, do you have any questions?
I'm thinking. I had one before and I thought I wrote it down, but I guess I didn't.
It'll come back to you. It's like a one-time offer. You can always make questions,
Yeah.
whenever they come up.
Right.
Okay. Oh, this is kind of random. It just popped in my head. Do you guys recommend that you bring like pepper spray or any of those kinds of self-defense things?
No. I don't think they'll let you on the airplane with pepper spray.
yeah.
It might get flagged in your luggage if they see
Yeah.
that and end up getting your luggage opened and either confiscated or then people are going through your luggage.
Okay.
So I wouldn't bring that.
Okay.
And I certainly hope there isn't a scenario where you would need to use it.
Right.
I think so much of the sexual harassment piece is like knowing when to brush something off and knowing when to confront someone in a constructive way, if that makes sense. Like if someone like Kat calls you, probably looking for attention, probably best to ignore it.
Right.
Whereas like what's up, if you're in a crowded place and someone like brushes up against you versus something that is different.
Yeah.
I think in that scenario, like confronting and addressing the situation in a constructive way is the best course of action.
Great. Okay, so I was assuming that I would like check a bag in the airport. Do you guys recommend that, or do you recommend that we like just go all carry on so we don't risk losing luggage?
Good question. This one I was hoping it would come up yesterday and I ran out of time. That's more power to you as a traveler if you can bring everything in, as a carry-on. But I would realistically bag that's manageable as your check-in piece and as your carry-on piece. And in your carry-on piece, make sure you change your clothes and your toiletries in your carry-on, like a mini version of your toiletries. So in the event that it takes your bag a couple of days to find you, you're not stuck entirely.
Okay. Makes sense.
The good news is you're pretty close to the airport if your bag is lost and when it does arrive in Dushanbe. And, in Morocco, for instance, the airport our volunteers are flying into is like 4 hours away from where they'll be living. So in the case you need to get your bag like a few days later, it won't be too challenging.
Okay. Nice.
We did talk about ATMs. UK money in general. I recommend generally taking $200 to $300 in cash with you, and your ATM card, and anticipating being able to withdraw money from the ATM there. Notifying your bank or your credit card that you're going to go and spend the summer in Tajikistan, so they don't turn off your credit card and access to your bank account. And then if you're carrying money around with you, keeping a amount of that money in the apartment in a safe place, and then distributing like a larger wad in one place, like $60 or so that you would carry around with you in a place that you hope to not take out in public. And then the smaller wad of like singles, like U.S. singles and Somali notes, small Somali notes, that like if you're buying a bottle of water or getting a cup of coffee, you can just, it's in your front pocket, you just pull out a smaller wad and you pay for it with that so that people don't see your larger amount of money. And then you also separate out your credit card and your ATM card so that everything's not all in one basket.
So I saw on the email that Aubrey forwarded from the PhD student that like there's issues with the currency just changing a lot in terms of like the power of the currency to the American dollar. Have you encountered any problems with like that?
Well, so with that, when you withdraw money from the ATM, you get the exact currency exchange rate of that day. It's an automatic thing. And so just what you want to avoid doing, and we're talking about small amount of money that it wouldn't be the end of the world one way or the other,
Yeah.
but that you don't, there's no point to withdraw all the money your 6 weeks in the first day that you're there and just hoard it in your apartment. Because I mean, one, it's just like you don't want to have that much money on hand to begin with. Two, like that would be the point that the currency, if it's being devalued, then what you think is $500 could end up being like $200 when you go to exchange it. But I think it's more in regards to like if you're doing business and trading with Tajik partners, like what setting an exchange rate.
Okay.
Kathleen brought this up earlier, whereas like using our phone as sort of our camera. And in the manual, it kind of talks about like not flashing around those more expensive items. Like I have an iPhone. Like, would you recommend that I get something else to take photos with, or that I'm a little more conservative with it, or?
This is another one of those subjective things. Like people there have smartphones, but it's more being prepared to live with the consequences of what if something happens to your smartphone. Like if you're using your smartphone as your camera all the time and you drop it and shatter it, the screen, you're not going to be able to get it fixed there. If you give it to one of the kids to play with at Rhoda and they break it, that's going to just make you feel pretty bad too. So it's just sort of like setting for yourself what are the limitations for your use of it, I think are more important than introducing people to, oh, I have an iPhone. Because people that will certainly seen those and have smartphones. I mean, unfortunately, one of our volunteers last summer lost her iPhone in the first few days that she was there. She left it at a restaurant and it was gone. So that was really upsetting for her for the whole time she was there because she was kind of pictures and then getting it replaced, et cetera, et cetera. You guys can fill in the blanks. But that's just like anything that's valuable, like your laptop, your phone. Like it's just thinking to yourself, like, I have small kids. I don't want kids touch my phone ever because they know that they can't play with my phone. My wife lets them play with her phone, but that's somehow I end up paying for that too. So I should have a household rule on it. But anyway, that's the point. Is just be prepared for what your stance is going to be with using your stuff.
Okay.
I remembered my question from earlier. Maybe it's just sort of about like the logistics. I don't really understand like if in the event that we were assaulted and we wanted to report it to like local authorities, like what would that look like? And then like here we have like what's called like a rape kit where you go into some sort of health facility and they do a SET examination. Like I don't know if the system is similar there or if it's something that we can consult like Faraday about or just sort of your guidance on that point if in the event it does happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's any kind of assault, the same sort of standard operating procedure is you got to contact Faraday. He'll be with you and help you navigate the local system. In the event of something extreme as that example, we would also contact the U.S. Embassy. And there's consular officers at the U.S. Embassy that they do something called American Citizen Services. And so if an American citizen gets drunk and assaults somebody in a nightclub, then they go and visit them in prison and they are basically their advocate. And then on the flip side, if an American citizen is assaulted some sort of way, then they work with you. They are your advocate in the local system there. And so we have a relationship with the embassy in Tajikistan, and you guys will get a briefing from the RSO. And that's if you want to get into more detail about what are the steps of what one should do or how that works. It's a very good question to ask the RSO. But like, from us, it would be get Faraday immediately involved and notify the RSO is the Regional Security Office. Sorry, and notify immediately that we have an American citizen that needs help from the embassy.
And it's like kind of horrible to go into this level of detail, but just important to remember that you shouldn't like bathe, or, I know you guys know these things because sadly we have to learn these things, but like you shouldn't, like, do not take a shower, do not like do anything that could, jeopardize an investigation of the event.
Okay.
Just to keep in mind. Don't brush your teeth, stuff like that.
Mm.
Uplifting.
Yeah, that's true.
Look, this falls into the category of things that it's worthwhile to talk about, but let me go back to where I began with all this, is that we're taking responsibility for our own safety. That means not having blinders on about everything that's out there in the world. It's not that we expect that these things are going to happen, but they do exist, unfortunately. And my mantra with all this is not to engage in a trust fall. That you are going to a place that you have the best of intentions. There are people who are eagerly awaiting your arrival and who want for you to be there, but just the same way as it would at Arizona State, this doesn't protect you against all the other things that are out there, and you shouldn't just be falling backwards into what you expect are open arms, but you should be assessing where you are, practicing situational awareness, and using basic common sense, and not checking that at the door because you're involved in a crossroad situation.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know the people that you'll be with are just so welcoming and want to go places with you and make sure you have such a wonderful experience. So you're never going anywhere like completely alone, and that's just not a good best practice, obviously. And as much as Ben said, it's so important to be prepared for any scenario, just because if you go through the steps, it's easier to do it in the moment of an emergency. The likelihood of this happening is quite low.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Right now.
So, as Kathleen said, this isn't your only opportunity to ask questions. We are going to do work plans with you guys. That'll be probably that we are in touch to do those sessions. We've got the talk with Dr. Gross coming up. It's next Friday. Is that right, Kathleen? Next Friday at 3?
Yeah, let me just confirm that. It's in the manual checklist.
It's also you can email or call at any point to ask questions as they come up.
Okay.
And we're happy to talk about them.
And yes, the talk is May 20th, so not this Friday, next Friday from 3 to 4 Eastern Time.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. I'm happy with what you did in those scenarios.
Yeah, you guys are on top of things.
Thanks.
Good.
All right.
Okay. Please be in touch
Nice
with any
to see
questions,
you.
all right?
Okay, sounds good.
Bye, guys.
Later,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.